Welcome to Aspen Leading Edge and our podcast. My name is Patty Roberts, and I am at St. Mary's University School of Law. Today's guest is Dean Haider Hamoudi. He has been Dean and the Principal Academic and Chief Executive Officer of the University of Cincinnati College of Law since August 2023. Welcome, Dean Hamoudi.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, congratulations, because you have almost survived your first year of deaning. And I think the first year can be the toughest given the transition. But you have obviously survived. You're thriving. And so tell us a little bit about what prompted you to seek out a dean position from where you were before and why Cincinnati appealed to you.
Sure. So thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate them. It's been a wild ride, but a deeply enjoyable one. When I started my faculty career at the University of Pittsburgh, I did not think that I was interested in administrative leadership. I think over time, as I was writing law review articles and enjoying doing that and developing scholarly expertise and also teaching my classes, which I also deeply enjoyed, I started to realize that the way in which I felt like I could make the greatest impact in the lives of other people was through administrative leadership. If I was chairing an appointments committee, you really helped shape the future of the institution. If you were chairing the curriculum committee, you could really help formulate how the curriculum was going to look for future generations of law students in a way that would prepare them for practice. And I sort of thought, especially for our students, the ways in which you could make the greatest difference in the greatest number of lives was through leadership. I started by chairing those kinds of committees. I then sort of became the Associate Dean of Research and then Academic Affairs and became the Vice Dean, was even interim dean for a period, and the Cincinnati position came open. I am an Ohioan. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and have thought a lot about being able to come back to Ohio. It is, even more importantly, an institution like my own that is small, really dedicated to the idea of a personalized education. And I should say the College of Law is small, but it is married to a much larger R1 research university, as was my predecessor institution. And here at Cincinnati, we really do try to connect to the resources that are available at the larger research institution. I saw a university leadership that was really dedicated to supporting the law school and advancing it, and an external community that was really committed to making sure that the University of Cincinnati could take the next step forward. It is a faculty and staff and student body as well that is very proud of its heritage. It's the fourth oldest law school in the United States. And really student-centered, student-focused, a real effort to try to make this, and again, married to a research institution and really academic excellence at the highest level among our faculty. Really put students first, though, in terms of making sure that they're successful. And that was the kind of combination that I was really excited about and delighted to take, and I have not been disappointed.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize that the University of Cincinnati College of Law was the fourth oldest law school in the country. How very interesting.
It is. It was founded, Timothy Walker, who was one of the early, he compiled an introduction to American law that was sort of one of the early compendia of American law. I think Oliver Wendell Holmes said it was a Blackstone of the day. So he was the first dean of the University of Cincinnati College of Law. William Howard Taft, of course, was another early dean. And so it has a very storied history that is very proud of, and a mission of educating and inspiring leaders who pursue justice and advance the role of law in society that has survived. Lots of schools changed their missions. This is a mission that's been around for over 100 years. They're very proud of it, and justifiably.
Well, and of increasing importance every day as things are happening across the country and the world. Let me ask you, am I recalling correctly that you have just moved into a new building as the College of Law? And if so, tell me a little bit about that new facility.
We have just moved into this new building. It used to be the College of Business. You can actually see the College of Business now from my window, the new College of Business. It was a $50 million renovation. It has received architectural awards from a number of different institutions, and I wish I could remember them, but not being an architect, I can't remember the names of all of them, and I don't want to mangle anything. But it really is a remarkable facility. It's a lot of windows and a lot of open study areas. It was meant to reflect in the design of the building the way in which we try to approach our educational mission. Transparency, a student-centered experience, because the whole middle atrium is really designed for students and as private rooms, glass enclosed private rooms, as well as public areas in which to study. Engagement between faculty and students because of the close connection of where the offices are. And it really is a remarkable building. It's one we're very proud of. We bring folks here all the time. Our biggest challenge, honestly, is that we have so many different entities across the city of Cincinnati, let alone with the university, let alone the city of Cincinnati, who are interested in using our space. And we want to be as open as we can, but at the same time, we have to remain dedicated to our educational mission. And so striking that balance is always a good challenge, but a challenge.
Certainly. If our listeners could see your office that you are speaking to me from, they would see these gorgeous, it's just a wall of windows behind you, 3 separate windows that go 2/3 of the way from the floor to the ceiling. So it's really quite a view, and it's exciting that in your first year you were able to be part of this move to the new facility. So as you have been through the ranks of administrative roles, and now you've been through your first 11 months as Dean of the University of Cincinnati College of Law, you must have some goals and a vision for where you hope you'll be able to take the college. And so I wonder if you'll share some of those with us.
Absolutely. This was something I thought about and cared about for a while. The school had an interim dean, an excellent interim dean, who helped maintain the ship. That created some level of desire for a strategic direction. Within a couple of weeks of joining, we had a faculty staff retreat, internal stakeholders. We all got together and had a lengthy SWOT session. What were our strengths? What were our weaknesses? Where were the opportunities and where were the threats that were out there? And from that, we launched upon a series of listening sessions across the city of Cincinnati with our students, and especially, and further discussions with faculty and staff and university administrators as well. And from all of that, we came up with 5 key strategic priorities. The first of those is student success, and that is making sure that our students have the skills and the experiences they need, not only to pass the bar, but also to succeed and thrive in the legal profession. The second of them was a commitment to experiential learning. The University of Cincinnati is the home of the co-op, and it is something where learning by doing is something that's deeply important to it. Our College of Law has a very vibrant externship program and a very strong clinical program. Over 95% of our students already take an externship or a clinic prior to their graduation. We wanted to make sure that we leaned into that experience and made sure that we make experiential education a focus of our move forward. Making sure that we bolstered our centers of excellence. We have a number of them: the Urban Morgan Institute for Human Rights, the Jones Center for Racial and Social Justice, the Ohio Innocence Project, its home is here at the University of Cincinnati, the Corporate Law Center, and the Cincinnati Center for the Global Practice of Law. These are major centers for us. They are diverse so that students interested in, say, business law can really focus on the Corporate Law Center, students interested in social justice with the Jones Center. At the same time, they're not so diffuse that, it becomes a Christmas tree or whoever wants anything, we're very good at it. And so it provides us discrete experiences that are diverse for students and diverse enough to really accommodate a large number of students without pretending that we're good at everything, which is another way of saying you're not particularly good at anything. That was the third priority, those centers of excellence. International education, international comparative law is something that I care a lot about. It's been always my area. We have a vibrant LLM program. We have a city that has a number of multinational corporations: Procter & Gamble, Fifth Third Bank, Kroger's, Duke Energy, just in terms of a large corporate presence in this area. And so there's a lot of desire to see us commit ourselves to a broader global, to really embrace the idea of a global legal education. And with this, we can take the advantage of the resources of a large R1 university that has huge UC international presence. And then finally, and I think this is something that's really key to the future of legal education everywhere, working professionals working in law adjacent areas, interested in a legal education that is short of a JD. So we have an MLS program, and I know you've talked a lot to others about online asynchronous education. We have certificates now, standalone certificates, or we're in the process of obtaining those that will stack themselves into an MLS program. We're creating concentrations, a lot of interest in the community from areas like corporate compliance, amateur sports law with all the NIL and all the evolving deals there, IT and cyber technology. I mean, the level to which there's a great deal of interest in that as well, cyberspace, interest in that as well among practitioners within those fields, again, professionals within those fields, human resources management, who are interested in legal education. And so we've really leaned into that presence. We've had a greater than 50% growth in those areas year on year, and we're really hoping to make that a more expanded area for us. It exposes us to new markets, broader markets that legal education has traditionally, but I think that it's going to be key to the future of legal education, and something that we have certainly embraced here
Well, those are some really exciting initiatives and goals, priorities for your strategic plan. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you are ensuring that your students will thrive personally and professionally in law school and practice. Are there any particular initiatives or services that you have that address that particular need that I know is on the minds of all legal educators?
Absolutely. For us, this is really key. And for us, the approach that we take is a holistic one. I think that one thing that I have noticed is that when schools see that they have a bar passage problem, they start to focus on making sure that they have academic success advisors in the spring of the third year. Or if they have an employment problem, they'll hire someone else for the Center for Professional Development. There may be, or Career Services Office or whatever it happens to be. And there may be very good reasons to do that. I don't mean to downplay those. At the same time, in my experience, working with students over the years, when you have a bar passage problem, very often when you try to identify the students on an individual basis, there's a much deeper problem than just something that can be solved by a little more tutoring. In a large number of cases there are, maybe not in every case. There's a wellness problem, there's a substance abuse problem, there's an imposter syndrome problem, there's a marginalization, an alienation. And if those are the problems and the time at which the intervention occurs is the spring of the third year, all the literature would suggest that's just way too late. You cannot possibly have a successful student outcome for the bar, for employment, or for anything else if you've waited that long. So what we really try to do is make sure that we, from the very beginning of the student experience, prior to orientation, really from matriculation all the way through to the passage of the bar, and really beyond that, that we try to make sure that we address all of those issues. So we have a pre-orientation program that we're instituting, for example, and this is for students who are at particular danger of marginalization and alienation. This could be just for underprivileged areas, underrepresented groups within the law. We have a number of first-generation students as well from places like Appalachia, and making sure that we can support those students. The pre-orientation really helps demystify the legal education experience. One thing we've noticed is if you wait till orientation, a lot of these students walk in and they walk into the same doors at the same time as someone who's a fourth generation lawyer and whose father's a federal judge and whose mother is a partner in one of the cheap firms downtown. And then they tell their friends, and they both went to some private school, and which law firm are you going to be second year summering at? And all of a sudden this other student, and they have no idea what they're talking about. And you and I know that, but of course the first generation student from Appalachia has no idea and assumes that they're behind. Something's wrong and they were an admissions mistake or something. And so making sure that we can demystify that experience, we can bring in judges and lawyers who had the same experience as these students and show them that in fact there is a pathway to success, that the pathway to success is right in front of them. And to make sure that through pre-orientation, we can offer the support. We continue that through orientation, which is very wellness focused. We make sure we continue a wellness-centric approach throughout the first year. We now have a mental health counselor available to us. It is combined with an academic success program where we attempt to make as early an intervention as we can after the fall semester. But we really try not to impose too many requirements on students at that point. We don't want them to feel stigmatized. And I could talk until I'm blue in the face about this isn't about stigma. I'm not trying to punish you by making you take class. If I wanted to punish you, I'd make you go run laps or something. It's much cheaper than hiring all these people to provide additional tutoring. It's because we're investing in you because we believe in you. No matter how much you say it, you really need to have the counseling part in place first. And you need those individuals who have developed those relationships with those students to do it. And so we follow it up with that. We make sure that throughout the law school journey, we remain in contact with our students. We make sure that, again, we have the counseling center as well that works in coordination with us. We talk a lot about substance abuse. We do a number of programs that are not alcohol centric. It always drives me crazy how everybody always says there's substance abuse, it's a huge problem, this and that, and then every single social event is a happy hour, and not realizing the mixed messages that students are receiving. And then when you've done all that, that's when that bar passage support that we were talking about before, and where that extra help for the Center of Professional Development and the professionalism training and all of that we also have, very much so. But all of that sort of comes in later on in the journey. And it must be layered on top of that foundation. And so that's really the approach that we've taken. I would say 80% of our resources then tend to be in that beginning part, and then maybe 20% in the other part. And so far, we've seen nothing but positive results in terms of bar passage and employment outcomes. We remain at or near the top of the law schools in Ohio. We're very happy with our outcomes. We want to see them improve. We always do. We'll be satisfied when we're at 100%. We're not at 100%. We're certainly happy with the progress that we've made.
Well, that's an impressive list of interventions that you've provided and support not only personnel, but programs for your students. What you said at the beginning about the pre-orientation for those who might be a little more vulnerable really resonates with me. When I came to be dean here, my own son was in another law school. And I thought when I met this marvelous community, majority, minority, Hispanic, and largely first generation, and I thought, wow, if they were starting on the same day as my son who grew up with a legal educator and knew all about law school, then they're exactly what you said. They're behind on the very first day, and that's just not fair. So we've done a lot of that too with the first generation boot camp and that kind of thing. But I'm glad to hear you emphasizing those wellness issues for your students and that you're seeing good results with the bar, because you're right, you can't just intervene at the 11th hour and expect success. Now, you mentioned the international and comparative law focus that you have, but I know that that comes from your own interests and love of international comparative law. And I wanted to ask you to talk to us for a few minutes about your role as editor-in-chief of the Arab Law Quarterly, and then your two books, Islamic Law in a Nutshell, published through West, and Islamic Law in Modern Courts, published through Aspen.
Sure. No, and I'm happy to talk about that. Actually, let me start with the casebook and the nutshell, because I think that was a project that was particularly important to me. Obviously, I couldn't really do those until I was more advanced in my scholarly career. Casebooks and nutshells are harder to hang your hat on to get tenure. At the same time, I find them really important. The writing of casebooks and nutshells is a general matter, because it really is a way in which you can reach students and provide them with a valuable pedagogical experience. For me, with respect to Islamic law, it was particularly important. The goal, and Mark Kamek from Southwestern Law School was my co-author with respect to the casebook, and really did a marvelous job. It was really a delight to work with. The casebook, what we really are trying to do is allow a student who is used to the American legal experience to get some exposure to Islamic law. So Islamic law isn't normally taught as by the case method. Even if you were thinking about Islamic law as it applies in modern legal systems, most of the time people focus on legislation or whatever, but they don't really do a case book per se. We wanted to do it in a way that would be accessible to law students and law professors who were used. So we made sure to really highlight particular cases in particular jurisdiction. I have native level fluency in Arabic. So for me, it was Iraq and Egypt and Jordan. And then for my co-author who has native level fluency, Mark Hamek in Bahasa, Indonesia, it was Indonesia and Malaysia and Singapore. And from these select jurisdictions, we were able to pick cases that helped highlight what it was that modern courts were doing when they attempted to really take material that is of medieval provenance and apply it in modern day conditions. A lot of it tends to be about things like family law, but very often there's these new practices like Islamic finance. And the nutshell, I should say, does a lot of the same thing. It obviously doesn't orient itself in a case method, but it is written in the way that nutshells are, which is to say it discusses cases in legislation a lot, to just sort of give people a sense of, well, when we talk about marriage and divorce law, let's leave aside for a second what you might learn in an undergraduate course or in an Islamic studies graduate level course, which is how Maliki jurists in the 15th century and wherever might have decided this. And let's look more at what it is that Morocco does or what it is that Egypt does when they're trying to do marriage and divorce law, which obviously can take some of that material, but can't apply a 16th century doctrine. There's some process of translation. And so that was a labor of love, and it's something that I continue to care a lot about, and just came back from a conference with a bunch of other deans who have all written casebooks and nutshells and found it really beneficial to trade notes on that. With respect to the Arab Law Quarterly, it is a different project, but it's something I'm also deeply devoted to. The Arab Law Quarterly is the largest English language scholarly journal that deals with issues exclusive to the Arab world. It's only with respect to Arab law and the law of Arab systems. Most of our authors tend to be from the region, and they tend to be voices that are not commonly heard in English. So we have a board of editors that is all relatively accomplished scholars, mostly from graduates of Western institutions, I'll say, and receive at least their terminal degrees. What we try to do is offer support. Some of us, we do symposium issues, and we do make sure that we have authors who are world renowned in a particular field in those. I mean, those are important too. But one of the most important things to me that we do is we allow faculty, junior faculty, women faculty from Saudi Arabia, faculty from Morocco, who wouldn't otherwise have a voice in English language periodicals, certainly wouldn't see their material published in Pine Online, for example. We really try to give those scholars a voice. Some of that involves extensive copy editing. Some of it all involves very often co-authorship with existing authors. Some of it just involves making sure that we read the article and provide a proper peer review that is supportive, and it is a major revision, but it gives them a sense of what it is that we're really looking for them to do in order to sort of develop creative thesis and then advance it. And through that, while the rejection rate ends up being quite high, at the same time, we've managed to publish what I think of as really interesting work from the field in the Arab world, from voices who wouldn't otherwise be known to Western scholars, and make them available. And to provide that kind of access, as again, that has been something that I've really gotten a lot of personally and professionally have found very rewarding and valuable. And so it is a reason that I spend a fair amount of time doing.
What a fascinating project. I know that back when I started in legal education about 24 years ago, that Islamic law was not a field that you found many people. It was rare to find people who were writing and teaching in that area of law. But I notice over time there have been more and more scholars that are exploring the issues surrounding Islamic law and comparative law related to our own nation. Do you find that continues? Is the field continuing to grow? And is there increased interest in Islamic law?
Yes, I do see that there continues to be interest in it. What I've really been gratified to see is the number of people who have done Islamic law historically, who started either with me or after me, obtain tenure and advance within institutions. In some cases, rise to tenured positions in other institutions. So we've always had, I think Harvard always had its Islamic law, which it saw runs very Krista still, and they run it very well. But in addition to that, to have scholars at places like Boston College and at the University of Texas, it just creates a certain level of respect for the field, I think, and interest in it. And so we've seen increasing numbers of it. I will say that what continues to be the case is that even as the main scholarly focus of a lot of these folks tends to be in Islamic law, inevitably, when it comes to teaching and when it comes to the vast bulk of teaching tends to be on the more traditional courses. And I understand why that is. I mean, especially sitting in the dean seat, there's a need to sort of cover that. That's great that you do Islamic criminal law. I hope that you can publish more in Islamic criminal law, but I really need someone to teach criminal law right now, American criminal law, to our American law students. So there's always a bit of a double identity to Islamic law folks, but I do think that it is a field that has gotten not only an increasing number of faculty who teach it, as you alluded to, but also increasing level of respect for those who do. We were sort of weird outliers before at random institutions outside of, say, Harvard. And now I think we're much more permeated all the way across the different.
Right. Now, as you begin year 2 of your deanship, what are you most looking forward to this particular year? Is there one thing that rises to the top?
Sure. If I was going to pick one thing, I mean, obviously we want to advance on all of our strategic priorities, all the things that we talked about before. So that's obviously a high priority. The other thing I really wanted to focus on, it takes a year to figure out your team. And I had the benefit of inheriting a marvelous team. There's been a little bit of turnover. There always is, I think, in these kinds of positions. Associate deans don't stay forever, and assistant deans have opportunities elsewhere. And so we've had a little bit of turnover, all natural and organic here and there. We have what I think is as stable a team as we can have. And I think making sure that team works well together as a team. I've always believed that the competitive advantage that is provided by a team that works effectively versus a team that does not is underestimated in both in academia and higher education, as well as in corporate America. I mean, in sports, people sort of take it for granted. If you don't work as a team, you aren't successful. It doesn't matter how good each individual player is. And I think that tends to be more undervalued in academia. So again, I have a great team. I think making sure that given everything, we're a new team, and certainly under new leadership, making sure that we work together effectively as a team is something I'm really excited to do. We've hired an outside consultant to help us with the project. We're going to do 3 or 4 offsites. We're starting that at the end of July. I'm really excited about the possibilities and the potential that this all raises for us. And I'm looking forward to seeing it come to fruition.
That's fantastic. Well, congratulations on building your team and good luck in finding ways for gelling in a maximally successful manner. Before we conclude, I want to ask you what I ask all guests on Aspen Leading Edge's podcast, and that is, what are your predictions for the future of legal education in the coming decade?
Sure. I mean, I think there's a couple of things, and that you probably won't be surprised to hear given our priorities. I think that the two major things, if I was going to point to two major trends, I think students are going to continue to drive the bus in terms of what they want is ultimately going to matter a lot to law schools because it's going to affect their admissions decisions and where they choose to direct their tuition dollars. And a lot of that has come across in terms of financial aid, for example. In my time going to law school, you got whatever aid package you got, and then you sort of compared them and decided whether you were going to go to, I mean, in my case, Columbia, or you were going to take an aid package and go somewhere else. But you certainly didn't try to negotiate these things in the way that students do now. So everybody's seen that change. I think that students are increasingly asking more and more questions about bar passage rates, about employment rates, about what the legal educational experience is like for them, what they can get out of it. I think these are all healthy questions. We get questions about wellness now that I think are really important, and experiential education. I mean, things that am I going to be able to get practice experience when I go to your school? I think being able to have answers to those kinds of questions and make sure that we understand that it is a student-driven. It hasn't always been a student-driven enterprise, but I think that the future of legal education is going to be much more directed that way, for better or for worse. I mean, in some cases, people note that it starts to feel a little bit more like students are consumers rather than. I just think that's just an inevitable trend, and one that we need to recognize is unlikely to change. The other major thing that I think is important is I don't think that the future of legal education as being entirely JD focused, I just don't think that that's sustainable. I do think that law schools have an important place. They have at least for us, still in law schools, I'm sure have a place as well. But thinking about it from the point of view of a law school that is part of a larger university, we occupy a really important place in a broader research university. We can do so much different interdisciplinary work that is both scholarly work as well as making sure that we reach out to different communities that are not necessarily lawyers and make sure that we have a voice in those. Sometimes that's providing an MLS, in our case, with us. Sometimes it's cooperating with the Business Center, doing an entire leadership training for business and law students. Sometimes it's a matter of trying to identify other interdisciplinary opportunities that we can do together, joint degree programs or sort of a combined program, or working with the undergraduates and making sure that we have a law minor that has a heavy component from the law school. There's different ways in which we can really provide value to universities that lie outside of purely educating students for the JD. That will continue to be a central plank. I don't mean to suggest that JD education is going away or that somehow it's going to be marginal. It's really central. But I just think that making sure that we can provide that value that I was alluding to the university and indeed to the broader community by virtue of our legal educational mission, I think is going to be increasingly important, increasingly vital, and the only way in which we're going to be able to sustain ourselves economically in the coming decades.
Well, thank you for those insights. And Dean Hamoudi, again, congratulations on almost wrapping up your first year as Dean of the University of Cincinnati College of Law. It's been a pleasure to talk with you on today's Aspen Leading Edge podcast episode. And if our listeners would like to hear additional thought leaders in legal education chat about their thoughts about the future of legal education and other issues, you can find other episodes on the Aspen Leading Edge podcast webpage or on your favorite podcast channel. Thank you, Dean Hamoudi.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.